Folks, what's going on? HeirofCarthage here, back in Total War Warhammer 2, and today I've kind of got a fun one for you. This one's going to be Felkon versus Lotus Moon. These are two very competitive players in the Total War Warhammer 2 community, and should be a very fun match. It's going to be Nagaraith versus the Lizardmen, Hexodal. So we'll take a look at the armies here. The map is this horrible Chaos Shrine map. It goes through the rotation. I mean, it's a cool looking map. It's an awkward one for competitive play, but it is what it is. So 3 Shadow Walkers for two Shadow Warriors and 1 Shadow Walker. I'll get my story straight here in just a minute. The Shadow Warriors are an archer with long range, decent damage, and they have stalk. The Shadow Walkers are similar, but even better attack, and they have poison weapon and poison missile damage, so they can really help kind of slow down things coming to attack an archery force like this. They're supported by a Mage of Life, the Fireborn Dragon Princes, and then as far as infantry goes, there's several units of Spearmen and several units of White Lions. And White Lions should be decent against Lizardmen in certain matchups, so not a bad choice there. The Princess, and she is atop her Star Dragon, facing down the forces of Hexodal, which is 3 Chameleon Skinks up front, and they are supported by a Skink Chief and an Ancient Salamander. Remember, the Ancient Salamander took a 1,500 hit point nerf back in the day. Poor dude got hit hard. And then as far as the rest of the army, there is a Slan Mage, Lore of Life, and a Skink Priest, Lore of Beast. The Life Mage is mainly for the Banishment and Earthblood, and then you've got the Skink Priest carrying the summoning of the Manticore. And then as for the infantry force, there's going to be several Saurus Spears. Saurus Spears because obviously they're going to be decent against large and decent against high elf spearmen. They're going to have support from some Sacred Croxies who can provide some armor-piercing value. And then there's 2 of those, 1 on either side. And then there's a Skink cohort with Javelin in the very back. And then a Bastillodon with Solar Engine providing some extra range for the Lizardmen. So the Lizardmen actually coming with quite a bit of range here now. A couple things to remember about this matchup. Chameleon Skinks do have poison attack. They're very good against lower armor targets or just huge targets like a dragon. If they get enough time to fire away at a dragon, they can do a lot of damage. And then the Skink Chief supporting them with some additional heavier fire that is pretty good against large targets as well. Chameleon Skinks also have a missile resistance innate as part of their characteristics, so they're decent at kind of doing a little bit of kiting and fighting like this with an enemy. So we'll go ahead and let things pan out. The Ancient Salamander is going to open things up and show that against a densely packed unit like these Spearmen are, I know they're spread wide, but any unit that's in kind of a denser formation like this, the Ancient Salamander will cause tremendous damage if it lands a shot. The trick with the Salamander is that because they took away so many hit points, it's relatively weak, and you have to be very careful with it and how you play with it in order to get its kills. It does have a fairly limited amount of ammunition as well. Let's kind of take a look at the overhead here. Initial skirmishing phases, you can see some really nice damage on 2 Spearmen from the Ancient Salamander. And I want to call something out real quick. I'm going to put in slow-mo and call this out. The Ancient Salamander, you'll notice that Lotus Moon is rotating his targets. And I like that because when you hit a target, it can disrupt the center of their formation and then cause your next shot to, say, land short or more often land long back here. So I like that he's just alternating targets and letting them reform before he takes another shot at them. It's actually a pretty solid move. I do that myself when playing campaign. I'm not usually good enough to remember to do it during a multiplayer match. You're going to see the Star Dragon here come down almost unsupported, but I mean, there's no huge risk to it to try and take out the Salamander. It does get a huge hit on it before being kind of swallowed up here by Chameleon Skinks, and then you're going to see the infantry pushing forward to push that dragon back, and they will. The dragon doesn't want to get overcommitted that early. The Dragon Princes here taking some shots here and some Chameleon Skink damage early on. This very valuable damage, but the armor and shields on those Dragon Princes will make it difficult for the Chameleon Skinks to fully tear them down. The Sacred Croxigores here going to support. Unbraced Spearman's going to take a nasty charge from the Fireborn. Not a lot that can be done there to stop that. Just the Skinks can keep firing away. Look at how easily the Salamander is punted. It got hit by a couple of volleys from the archers, 2 charges from the Star Dragon, and she gone. It's decently armored as far as the unit. It's just big, and so even non-armor piercing archers do a ton of damage because it's just so easy to hit. So I think the Salamander is a little bit underpowered. Felkon seemed to kind of hint as much whenever he gave me this replay. CA, please, don't underpower our beloved Salamander. Now, I think I remember seeing a ton of them back when the pass first came out, so some people may have been saying, they were overpowered. Maybe so, but 1,500 hit points, boy, that's a big nerf. That is a big nerf indeed. See the Star Dragon under kind of constant fire here and taking a lot of damage, but doing a really good job using the Terror to help break up the Sacred Croxigors over here, who were taking a savaging. And that Fireborn had been badly damaged earlier, is mostly healed now, thanks to the Life Mage in the background for Nagarythe. However, on this flank, things not going as well for Nagarythe. The fight's holding together. Sacred Croxigors are racking up some kills, though they are under heavy archer fire. The Manticore is going to chase off the Princess and the Mage, but while that's happening, the Fireborn find their opening and get into the back lines of Hexatl here, and are going to be a very dangerous force to be reckoned with. Though you'll notice that Hexatl, rather than blobbing, is spread out a little here. So one skink headed this way, one's going to pull this way, one this way. They got a Javelin. So there's a bunch of units here. If you can spread that out, it'll slow down the damage they can do and allow the Chameleon Skinks to do some return damage. But it's a bad situation. Even with their poison, the Fireborn are going to do a lot of damage to the Chameleon Skinks. The other two units will have to support, and they're running fairly low on ammunition. They may not have enough ammo to pull it off. In the meanwhile, the Shadow Warriors and Shadow Walkers are taking their toll slowly over the course of this battle. The Legion of Chakwa is present, which is a big help. It can provide some extra missile support, which I'm sure it did early in this fight, but its reuse of that ability takes time. And once these units run out of ammunition, in a late game melee, they're pretty darn good, especially when the Shadow Walkers are involved because they poison with their weapon attacks. Look at this, the Sara Spearmen gonna get into these Shadow Warriors. Or sorry, Shadow Warriors. Not a bad engagement for them, but there's regrouped infantry that's gonna end up cutting them off from that engagement. A lot of damage done to the Life Mage by the Summoned Manticore. It was a good play by the Lizardmen. You can see the power bar relatively close right now. The Fireborn are slowly and steadily taking damage. The Legion of Chakwa should be well supported over here with the Skink Priest. And the Skink Chief is still alive and firing here, as is the Solar Engine, doing steady damage to the Princess. But, I mean, with the Life Mage around, taking down a Star Dragon that doesn't want to overcommit can be quite difficult. A couple of Chameleon Skinks here got overextended into this fight. They were nearly out of ammunition anyway, and the Shadow Warriors certainly won't have any problem shutting down Chameleon Skinks in melee. Chameleon Skinks just not quite as good in that melee. You can see the last volleys here going into the Slan Mage. He does have quite a decent bit of missile resistance, but won't be enough to save him from taking no damage. And at this point, any damage he takes is pretty brutal. Look at the breath attack here from the Star Dragon, putting some devastating damage into those Sara Spears, who were having a hard time holding out as it is. And now Nagarythe kind of starting to gain some advantage here. The Legion of Chakwa is going to be a tough unit, but it's the only unit, and it has to hold out against a whole lot of enemies here. The Bastiladon can support them as soon as it's done doing its ranged mission, but how the Star Dragon's going to be killed at this point is really only the Skink Chief kind of possesses that capability. And he, at this point, is trying to avoid some infantry engagements out on the flank, trying to make his way closer to the battle. There's healing on the Star Dragon, so despite all the shots, it's still over 2,000 hit points, and now has a clear path to the Slan Mage. It's going to be one more Manticore summon for the Lizardmen and some regrouped Sacred Croxies. Everybody come in and help against the Star Dragon, potentially try and save the Slan Mage here, but that Star Dragon is just a tough character to deal with, and the Fireborn now charging in, hitting the Legion of Chakwa hard, and dropping their leadership when it's very near to the Star Dragon is dangerous, because you could end up with some terror routing in here. See the Slan Mage now gone, the Sacred Croxigors get terrified, Legion of Chakwa gets terrified, and the Feral Manticore is the only one left. And so Nagarythe really kind of hammered the nail into the coffin of the Lizardmen here with that one. Lotus Moon putting up a great fight, but Felkon able to just take the engagement there and get what he needed out of it. Check out these Shadow Walkers. Don't get to see these guys in melee too much. Star Dragon's going to come down after the Distillodon as well. Distillodon is armor piercing, but really no prayer of overcoming a Star Dragon, especially with the loss of leadership in the army. And with these Shadow Walkers on the loose and no Saurus Spears really left to speak of, nothing's going to be able to handle Nagarythe and melee here. So cool use of Shadow Walkers and Shadow Warriors here in a fun game between Lotus Moon and Felkon. Interesting faction matchups. I liked that the Lizardmen didn't just go no skirmish. They tried a skirmish here, and they did a decent job. It was a difficult situation to skirmish in. You're not going to see a ton of kills on their skirmishers, but the Chameleon Skinks caused a lot of damage to the Fireborn. They caused damage to the Star Dragon, quite a lot. So you won't see a huge kill count there, but the units did manage to inflict some damage. In the end, it was not enough for them to win the battle. And then you look at the Salamander, a few good hits. It already had 40 kills, but just went down so easy. I mean, not to say that Felkon isn't a good player. He obviously is, which is how he managed to get in there and try and take this thing out. But you can kind of get a feel for how difficult it can be to defend a Salamander when they're kind of that weak. Now, just imagine if this thing had a few more hit points. Who knows how that could have potentially changed the fight. It's hard to say how that might balance back and forth. I love Ancient Salamanders in campaign because you can give them a lot more buffs. You can protect them better. The AI is absolutely stupid, and it will blob up. And Ancient Salamanders are just fantastic for busting up those blobs. Difficult to use in multiplayer, though. Definitely difficult to use in multiplayer at times. Though, again, like I said, if there's units that are in a tighter formation, the missile volleys from the Salamander are devastating. They do a lot of damage if it can get into the right place. It's just a squishy unit and makes it tough to use at times. So it's fun to see Lotus Moon play here. Interesting army here with Hexatl. I'm terrible at picking Lizardmen armies. And some might say, well, he lost this battle, so I don't know if it's a good pick. Well, you never know how these things are going to turn out. Little things can change here or there. I'm just saying that, like, I can tell by looking at his forces here that he's got a different thought process, obviously, and skill level than me, which is no surprise, right? He's a more serious player than I am at this game. But I love seeing the way that these guys pick armies, Felkon and Lotus Moon here. It's fun. I like watching these competitive players play. Not always the type of play style that I'm going to be able to pull off or go for, but it is always curious, like I said, just to kind of see the mindset that they have. I always probably end up trying to have too much infantry, and you can see here that he was going for a much simpler, smaller build that does its damage in different ways. Here's your damage-dealing component from a missile standpoint across this row, and then a damage-dealing component. The spears were just meant as kind of a safe space, probably, for the Slan. And then, of course, you're going to support with a lot more skirmishy type things and try and do your damage with that. And then, of course, use the banishment to potentially break up any blobs or any other targets of opportunity from the Life Slan. Then on Felkon's side, Fireborn ended up being very important here. Very important indeed. See, the archers all picked up a chevron. They did a ton of damage to the Salamander. They were able to do good damage to other targets. They were very valuable in this engagement, gave Nagarythe some very important range to work with. Anyway, hope you all enjoyed this one. HeirofCarthage going to be signing off for now. I'll have more battles for you in the near future. My internet speed was looking a little better yesterday. I'm hopeful, cautiously hopeful. We'll see. Maybe I'll even get to stream one of these days during all this working at home if my ISP will kind of get their crap back together. Who knows? Plus, I think YouTube is under a lot of strain as well, so it's hard for me to tell whether it's my ISP or YouTube. I'm pretty sure it's my ISP for the last few days, because even my speed tests were really bad. It's just that once you get a decent speed test and you're uploading to YouTube, it's really hard to tell who's giving you the problem at that point. Yeah, but anyway, we will see. I am happy to be making this content for you. Hope you all are staying healthy and hanging in there during all this worldwide quarantine. HeirofCarthage signing out for now. I will see you soon.